Welcome to a new episode of Truthful Crime Stories. Today we explore a heartbreaking case of love, obsession, and murder in the quiet town of Tifton, Georgia. This is a story filled with hidden secrets, emotional struggles, and a violent crime that left a deep impact on all those connected to it. This is the story of a well-respected man whose life came to a horrifying end at the hands of an unlikely killer, leaving the town with unanswered questions that would linger for years. Willy Tanners, 49, was a prominent and admired member of the small town of Tifton, Georgia. He owned Tanners Hardware, a local store that had been a cornerstone of the community for over 20 years. Tanners Hardware was a local favorite, known for its helpful staff and variety of tools and supplies. Whether customers needed a simple screwdriver or tips on fixing a leaky faucet, they could always rely on the store. Willy was a familiar face behind the counter, always ready with a friendly smile and casual conversation, whether it was about the weather or the latest Jeopardy episode. To anyone who knew him, Willy seemed to have it all together. Willy was married to his high school sweetheart, Willy Tanners, who was 48. The couple was actively involved in church events and local charity work. They lived in a simple but cozy home, always decorated for the holidays with sparkling lights and a wreath on the front door. But beneath this picture-perfect life, Willy was concealing a dark secret. Although Willy was seen as a loyal husband and respected member of the community, he had become entangled in a secret affair with Madison Kelly, an 18-year-old high school senior. Madison, admired for her beauty and intelligence, often visited the hardware store. What started as a friendly connection soon evolved into a hidden sexual relationship. As the holiday season neared, Willy found himself torn between guilt and desire. He knew what he was doing was wrong, yet he couldn't let go of the emotional bond he had formed with Madison. The affair was passionate and intense, leaving Willy trapped between his remorse and his deepening feelings for her. In the days before his death, Willy grew more withdrawn, struggling to keep up the appearance of a devoted husband while wrestling with his inner conflict. As Christmas drew near in December 2019, his behavior shifted noticeably. He became more detached, staying away from home more often and working late into the evenings. It seems like you're asking for the next part of the story, and I'm happy to continue it. Based on the context so far, here's a possible continuation. As the holidays approached, Lynn began noticing Willy's unusual behavior. Concerned but unsure of the cause, she tried to talk to him, but Willy brushed off her concerns, claiming work was just hectic. Meanwhile, the weight of his secret affair with Madison and the guilt over betraying his wife began to consume him. On Christmas Eve, after another late night at the hardware store, Willy made a decision. He knew he couldn't continue living this way, caught between two lives, two people. His guilt and the fear of being discovered overwhelmed him. The next morning, Willy was found dead in the garage, the result of an apparent suicide. His sudden death shocked the community, leaving everyone, including Lynn, searching for answers. The truth about his affair with Madison remained hidden, but the dark shadow of Willy's inner torment would forever linger over those he left behind. Lynn saw the shift but thought it was due to the stress of managing the business during the hectic holiday season. Friends and neighbors also observed that Willy seemed distracted and less cheerful than before. However, no one could have predicted the trouble that was quietly building up and would soon disrupt their small town's tranquility. On the morning of December 22, 2019, just days before Christmas, Tifton, Georgia, was calm as residents wrapped up their holiday shopping and decorated their homes. At around 9 a.m., Willy Tanners, Willy's wife, was heading home after volunteering at First Baptist Church to help prepare for the Christmas Eve service. She found Willy's truck in the driveway, which seemed unusual because he had said he was going to pick up some last-minute supplies for the store. As Lynn stepped into their home on Bride Street, the first thing she noticed was the scent of fresh pine from their Christmas tree. The tree was still glowing with colorful lights, and beneath it were neatly wrapped presents, including some with her name on them. Yet, something felt wrong. The house was unnervingly quiet, and Willy didn't answer when she called his name. As Lynn entered the living room, she was confronted with a scene that would stay with her forever. Willy's lifeless body was sprawled on the floor near the Christmas tree, surrounded by broken ornaments and tinsel. His head was covered in blood, and a hammer lay nearby, stained with what she could only assume was his blood. Lynn fell to her knees, trembling as she struggled to comprehend the horrifying scene before her. Overcome with panic, Lynn made herself stay composed enough to call 911. Her voice quivered as she described the situation to the operator, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God, my husband isn't breathing. There's blood everywhere," she sobbed. The operator tried to soothe her, advising her not to touch anything and to wait outside for the police and paramedics. In a matter of minutes, the once quiet street was illuminated by the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, whispering and speculating about the events unfolding. Lynn sat on the front porch, stunned and unable to grasp how her life had changed so suddenly. The Tifton Police Department arrived at the scene shortly after Lynn's 911 call. Detective Nora Collins, a seasoned officer with over 15 years of experience, led the investigation. Renowned for her keen instincts and methodical approach, she was respected by colleagues and feared by criminals. As she stepped out of her unmarked cruiser, she was immediately struck by the stark contrast between the festive decorations on the Tanner home and the grim scene awaiting her inside. The living room was a jarring blend of holiday cheer and brutal violence. Christmas lights sparkled on the tree, casting reflections off the shattered ornaments strewn across the floor. Willy Tanners' body was found near the base of the tree, his head severely crushed from what looked like multiple hammer blows. Blood had splattered onto the nearby gifts, soaking the wrapping paper and ribbons. Detective Collins surveyed the scene, her mind racing as she began to piece together the events. The hammer, still lying beside Willy's body, was promptly bagged as evidence. The crime scene was bloody but strangely contained. There were no signs of a struggle beyond the area around the tree, suggesting that Willy had been caught completely off guard. The forensic team arrived soon after, led by Dr. Philip K. Wang, a meticulous medical examiner known for his precise work. Dr. Wang began examining Willy's body, noting the severe head trauma that likely caused instant death. Based on the state of rigor mortis, he estimated the time of death to be between 10 p.m. and midnight the previous evening. Detective Collins instructed her team to gather every piece of evidence possible. They dusted for fingerprints, took photographs, and searched for additional clues that might lead to the killer. She also interviewed Lynn Tanner, who, though still in shock, managed to provide a basic timeline of her morning and Willy's activities from the previous day. As the investigation progressed, Detective Collins couldn't shake the sense that this was a crime of passion. The extreme brutality of the attack hinted at deep anger or jealousy, emotions often driving such violent acts. The key question was who could have harbored such intense hatred toward Willy Tanner. Collins was resolute in finding the answer. The first person Detective Nora Collins chose to investigate was Madison Kelly, an 18-year-old high school senior who had been secretly involved with Willy Tanner. Madison was known in Tifton as a bright student with a promising future, actively participating in several extracurricular activities. Recently, she had impressed audiences as Tiny Tim in a local production of A Christmas Carol. Beneath Madison's polished exterior, she was emotionally fragile, a trait that had become more evident in recent months. Madison lived with her mother, Tammy Kelly, in a small but tidy house on the outskirts of town. The Kellys were known for their privacy, and Tammy was recognized in the community for her controlling nature and preoccupation with her daughter's appearance, often overshadowed by her own interests. Madison's father had left the family after coming out as gay. When Detective Collins arrived at the Kelly residence on the afternoon of December 22nd, she found Madison in her bedroom, still in her pajamas and visibly shaken by the news of Willy's death. The room, a typical teenage sanctuary with posters of pop stars like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande, also displayed signs of Madison's obsession with Willy. Detective Collins observed a framed shirtless photo of Willy on Madison's nightstand, and her journals were filled with graphic entries detailing their sexual relationship. During the interview, Madison was initially cooperative but became visibly emotional when questioned about her relationship with Willy. She confessed to the affair, explaining how they had developed a close bond over the past year. Madison disclosed that she had fallen deeply in love with Willy and had even dreamed of a future together. However, as Christmas approached, he had become distant, and she feared he might be planning to end their relationship. When Detective Collins questioned Madison about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, Madison hesitated before stating she had been home alone, studying for her final exams. Madison's alibi was weak, and her emotional state raised concerns for Detective Collins. Her tears and trembling hands suggested she was under significant stress, but it was uncertain whether this stemmed from guilt or grief. As the interview progressed, Madison's demeanor shifted from sorrowful to defensive. Madison insisted she was not involved in Willy's death and began speaking erratically, blaming a mysterious man she referred to as Bob for influencing her actions. She claimed that Bob had coerced her into pursuing a sexual relationship with Willy under the threat of torture. However, when Detective Collins pressed for more details, Madison became evasive and confused. Detective Collins remained skeptical of Madison's account. The combination of Madison's emotional instability, obsession with Willy, and weak alibi made her a prime suspect. However, Detective Collins knew she needed more solid evidence before making an arrest. The investigation into Madison Kelly was just beginning, and Collins was resolute in uncovering the truth behind Willy Tanners' tragic death. The second person on Detective Nora Collins' list was Lynn Tanner, Willy's wife of 25 years. Lynn was a prominent figure in Tifton, known for her active role in community and church activities. She was warm and friendly, always greeting neighbors with a smile and frequently hosting gatherings at their home. Despite the outward appearance of a happy marriage, Detective Collins knew that Lynn had long harbored suspicions about Willy's fidelity. In the days leading up to the murder, Lynn had been preoccupied with Christmas preparations and church events, including the upcoming Christmas Eve service at First Baptist Church. To the outside world, Lynn appeared focused on her faith and family. However, internally, she was troubled by a growing sense of unease. She had noticed Willy's increasing absences, which he frequently attributed to work or church commitments. Despite her shock from discovering her husband's body that morning, Lynn couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. During her interview with Detective Collins on December 22nd, she sat at the kitchen table and recounted her marriage to Willy. She described him as a loving husband, but admitted that they had grown distant and their relationship had become sexless in recent years, particularly after their son Rifle left for college. Lynn admitted that she had suspected Willy of having an affair, especially after he repeatedly turned down her requests for sex, though she had no proof. As she spoke about the strain it had placed on their relationship, her eyes filled with tears, particularly over the past few months. Detective Collins then asked Lynn about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Lynn said she had been at home, preparing for the next day's church service. She had gone to bed early, expecting Willy to join her later. When she woke up in the middle of the night and realized he wasn't there, she assumed he had fallen asleep in the living room. It wasn't until the next morning that she discovered the horrifying truth. Lynn's account of the evening was clear, but Detective Collins couldn't overlook the possibility that Lynn's suspicions about Willy's affair might have driven her to commit the murder. The brutal nature of the crime implied a deeply personal motive, and as the victim's wife, Lynn had both the opportunity and a potential motive. However, Lynn's grief seemed genuine, and she remained cooperative throughout the investigation. Lynn answered all of Collins' questions without hesitation and even provided access to Willy's personal belongings, including his phone and computer. Despite her cooperation and apparent grief, Collins was aware that strong emotions could be powerful motivators. She wasn't ready to rule Lynn out as a suspect just yet. The investigation continued, with Collins meticulously scrutinizing every detail of Lynn's account. The third person Detective Nora Collins needed to investigate was Tammy Kelly, Madison Kelly's mother, known for her strong-willed and controlling personality. Tammy was recognized in Tifton as a perfectionist, obsessed with appearances and maintaining a strict household, especially after her husband left her following his coming out. She was active in the community, frequently organizing events at the local church, but her primary focus remained on her daughter, Madison. Tammy's relationship with Madison had always been strained. Tammy's obsessive fear and control were evident in how she managed every aspect of Madison's life, driven by her concerns over her daughter's attractiveness and potential. Tammy's high expectations for Madison extended to every facet of her life, from her clothing to her social interactions. Neighbors were aware of Tammy's harsh discipline, with disturbing rumors suggesting that Tammy would punish Madison severely, including a story that she whipped Madison whenever she thought her daughter's appearance attracted too much attention from men. Detective Collins approached Tammy on December 23rd, the day after Willy Tanners' body was discovered. Tammy was at home, appearing surprisingly unfazed by the events of the past day. She welcomed Collins into her spotless living room, decorated with traditional Christmas ornaments, including a meticulously trimmed tree and a nativity scene. While Tammy spoke calmly and composedly, there was an underlying tension in her demeanor. Collins started the interview by asking Tammy about her relationship with Willy. Tammy described him as a good man and a pillar of the community, but did so in a distant manner. When the conversation turned to Madison, Tammy's tone grew more guarded. Tammy admitted to being angered by Madison's recent behavior, noting that her daughter had started wearing makeup and a bra in the weeks leading up to the murder. When Collins inquired about whether Tammy knew of Madison's sexual relationship with Willy, something Tammy had been trying to prevent, Tammy's composure wavered slightly. She denied knowing about the affair, but acknowledged that she had observed Madison dressing in a way she described as inappropriate. Tammy claimed she had attempted to discuss Madison's behavior with her, but Madison had dismissed her concerns, insisting everything was fine. Collins considered the possibility that Tammy's jealousy and need for control might have driven her to commit the murder. Tammy's intense desire to control her daughter, coupled with the potential scandal of Madison's affair with a much older man, presented a possible motive. Despite her cool and collected demeanor, Tammy showed no signs of guilt or remorse during the interview. She was polite and cooperative, but provided little useful information. As Collins left the Kelly home, she realized that Tammy could not be dismissed as a suspect. The investigation was becoming increasingly complex, with each suspect unveiling new layers of potential motives and secrets. Yet, without concrete evidence, Collins was still working to piece together the puzzle. On December 24, 2019, just one day before Christmas, the investigation took a significant turn. It was a cold, gray morning in Tifton, Georgia, with temperatures in the low 40s. Detective Nora Collins and her team returned to the Tanner residence, carefully re-examining every part of the crime scene, determined to uncover any overlooked clues. During their search, one officer noticed something unusual near the fireplace. Amidst the neatly wrapped Christmas presents, the officer discovered a small, torn piece of paper partially hidden under the rug. The paper appeared to be a handwritten note, but only a fragment was legible. It read, "Dirty boy, meet me at," followed by a time, 10:00 p.m., and the initials MK. This discovery immediately caught Detective Collins' attention. The initials MK appeared to match those of Madison Kelly, Willy's secret lover. Additionally, the time mentioned in the note, 10:00 p.m., aligned with the estimated time of Willy's death. Collins recognized that the note could be crucial evidence linking Madison directly to the crime scene on the night of the murder. She promptly ordered a forensic analysis to determine if the handwriting matched Madison's. The note was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta for further examination. While revisiting Madison's home, Collins and her team discovered a notebook hidden under Madison's mattress. The notebook contained disturbing entries about her obsession with Willy, including detailed plans to meet him in secret. This finding provided further evidence of Madison's intense fixation and possible motive. One of the entries in the notebook, dated December 22nd, matched both the time and place mentioned in the torn note found at the Tanners' house. This new evidence was crucial, strongly linking Madison to the crime scene and reinforcing the connection between her and the murder. The notebook entry not only placed Madison at the scene of the crime, but also revealed a motive driven by jealousy and obsession. With the forensic analysis confirming that the handwriting on the note matched Madison's, Collins felt the case was finally coming together. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, pointing increasingly towards Madison as a key suspect in Willy Tanners' murder. This was the breakthrough Collins had been waiting for. With the new evidence solidifying Madison Kelly as the prime suspect, the investigation's focus sharply narrowed on her. As the case progressed, all signs pointed increasingly toward Madison, Willy's 18-year-old secret lover. The small town of Tifton, Georgia, was still reeling from the shock of Willy's brutal murder when the investigation revealed an even more startling twist. Madison's obsessive love for Willy had been intensifying for months. As the holiday season approached, her fear of being abandoned grew stronger, driving her to a desperate and violent act. Terrified that Willy, a man more than twice her age, might leave her to focus on his family during Christmas, Madison was consumed by the thought of losing him. Her fear and jealousy drove her into a rage. On the night of December 21st, 2019, Madison resolved to confront Willy at his home. Desperate for reassurance that Willy still loved her, Madison took a drastic step. She stripped off all her clothes and begged him to have sex with her in the middle of the living room. Willy, already feeling the pressure of his double life and fearing that his wife would discover the affair, panicked. Willy tried to end the relationship, fearing exposure and the consequences it could bring to both their lives. This attempt to break things off pushed Madison over the edge. In a moment of uncontrollable fury, Madison snapped. In a fit of uncontrollable fury, Madison seized a hammer that Willy had intended to use for hanging Christmas lights and bludgeoned him to death with it. The scene was grotesque, with the holiday decorations in the living room starkly contrasting with the brutality of the crime. After the murder, Madison was acutely aware that she was in serious trouble. In a desperate attempt to avoid punishment, Madison fabricated an elaborate story. She pretended to suffer from early-onset schizophrenia and claimed that a secret lover named Bob had been manipulating her for years. According to her convoluted tale, Bob was a high-ranking politician involved in wild sex rituals and sinister satanic practices. Madison insisted that Bob had coerced her into a life of sin and ultimately ordered her to kill Willy. However, the police remained skeptical of her story. Detective Nora Collins, leading the investigation, saw through Madison's lies and was not convinced by her elaborate and implausible claims. Despite Madison's attempts to shift the blame, the evidence was overwhelming. The handwriting on the note found at the crime scene matched Madison's, and her obsessive notebook entries revealed a young woman consumed by jealousy and rage. When confronted with this evidence, Madison attempted to alter her story, but the mounting proof against her made it clear that she was responsible for Willy's murder. Madison claimed that Bob was merely a voice in her head, asserting that she was mentally ill and had lost control of her actions. However, the police did not believe her claims. They were convinced that she was fabricating the story to cover up her crime. On December 26, 2019, Madison Kelly was officially arrested for the murder of Willy Tanner. She was taken into custody without incident, maintaining an eerily calm demeanor as she was led away in handcuffs. The town of Tifton was left in shock, grappling with the unsettling reality of how a young woman with such a promising future could commit such a heinous crime. Willy's family, deeply devastated by his loss, found some solace in knowing that the person responsible for his death was behind bars. However, the pain of his absence, especially during the holiday season, was a burden they would carry for the rest of their lives. The trial of Madison Kelly began in early February 2020. The small town of Tifton, Georgia, was captivated by the case, with many locals closely following every detail. The courtroom was filled to capacity as the prosecution and defense presented their cases. District Attorney Robert Whitman, a seasoned attorney known for his no-nonsense approach, led the prosecution. He argued that Madison's crime was premeditated, pointing to the evidence of her obsession and the planned nature of the attack. Whitman, 52, detailed how Madison's obsession with Willy Tanner had escalated to a dangerous level, culminating in the brutal murder when he tried to end their affair. He highlighted the cold, calculated nature of the crime, noting that Madison had brought the hammer with her, fully intending to use it. Whitman dismissed Madison's claims of mental illness as a desperate attempt to evade responsibility, presenting her actions as a deliberate and premeditated crime. On the other side, defense attorney Karen Blackwell, 45, known for her compassionate yet sharp legal mind, argued that Madison was mentally unstable at the time of the murder. Blackwell contended that Madison had experienced a psychotic break, driven by the fear of losing Willy and the intense pressure of their secret relationship. She urged the jury to consider Madison's troubled home life and its impact on her mental state. Blackwell portrayed Madison as a vulnerable young woman who had been manipulated by an older man and who ultimately broke down under the immense pressure. Throughout the trial, Willy's family sat in the front row, their faces marked by grief. They listened quietly as the details of Willy's double life were exposed, their pain palpable as the courtroom revealed the complexities of their loved one's tragic end. The pain of Willy's betrayal was evident, but so was the profound sorrow of his family. After several days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. On February 18, 2020, Madison Kelly was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Madison Kelly to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The sentence elicited mixed reactions. Some felt it was too lenient given the brutality of the crime, while others saw it as a fair acknowledgement of Madison's youth and troubled mental state. Willy's family expressed relief that the trial was over but understood that the scars from the tragedy would remain with them forever. After the trial, life in Tifton, Georgia, gradually returned to normal, though the memory of the crime lingered. Willy Tanners' hardware store, once a vibrant community hub, closed its doors for good, leaving a lasting impact on the town. Without Willy to run it, his family decided they couldn't continue the business. The closure marked the end of an era for the small town, leaving a significant void in the community. Madison Kelly was transferred to a state prison, where she began serving her 25-year sentence, her future uncertain as she faced the long years ahead. Despite her attempts to feign mental illness during the trial, the prison's psychiatric evaluations found no evidence of schizophrenia or any other condition that could explain her actions. Madison spent her days in relative isolation, receiving few visitors. Her once promising future had faded, replaced by the harsh reality of life behind bars. Lynn Tanner, Willy's widow, struggled to cope with the revelations of her husband's double life. The knowledge of his infidelity with an 18-year-old girl was a heavy burden. Despite the support from her church community, Lynn withdrew from public life, opting to grieve privately as she faced the challenge of moving forward. After her conviction, Madison Kelly was transferred to a state prison to begin serving her 25-year sentence. Despite her attempts to claim mental illness, psychiatric evaluations found no evidence of schizophrenia or other conditions that could have explained her actions. Madison spent most of her time in relative isolation, with few visitors. Her life outside of prison, once full of promise, had ended abruptly, and she faced the harsh reality of her new existence behind bars. Lynn Tanner eventually sold the family home and moved to a nearby town, seeking a fresh start away from the painful memories of her past. Tammy Kelly, Madison's mother, faced her own difficulties after the trial. The scandal had brought shame upon her family, and her once ironclad control over her daughter's life had crumbled, leaving her to deal with the fallout from the case. Tammy Kelly became a pariah in the community, with many blaming her controlling nature for Madison's downfall. She retreated from public view, avoiding the judgmental stares of her neighbors. For the residents of Tifton, the events of December 2019 served as a harsh reminder that even in a close-knit community, hidden secrets can fester and lead to devastating consequences. The town's Christmas celebrations that year were subdued, overshadowed by the memory of Willy Tanners' murder. It would take years for Tifton to heal from the trauma, and even then, the story of Madison Kelly and Willy Tanner would remain one of the darkest chapters in the town's history. A Truthsful Crime Case solvers. Interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe.